Thank you. Thank you for such a warm welcome. Good evening, everyone. Uh, First of all, I would like to thank Modak Trainer Academy, especially Mr. Ganesh Modak and Dr. Gagi De, to giving me this opportunity to have this platform to share my thoughts on this topic, that is the microplastic pollutions and its effects on aquatic life with reference to fish. So, first of all, not wasting, thank you. Let's start today's talk on microplastic pollutions and its effects on aquatic life with reference to fish. So, before starting that, first of all, we have to know what are actually these plastics and how these plastics are related with those microplastics. So, plastics, in generally derived from the Greek word plastikos, are the synthetic organic and the semi-synthetic polymers of high molecular weight that are produced by polymerizing monomers that are extracted from oil and gases. The first modern plastics was manufactured in the year 1907 in a form of bakelite. We all know the bakelite. And since then, as the technology evolves, to many to many more, the inexpensive manufacturing technique that results the mass production of lightweight, durable, inert plastic form or corrosion resistant plastics in nowadays. And though the mass production of these plastics began in the year 1940, but the manufacturing increase rapidly as the modern era takes place. The global production exceeds almost 368 million ton in the year 2019 to 2019 to 390.7 million ton in the year 2021. And it is assumed that by the year 2050, the plastic production will reach to 33 billion metric ton per year. And this results the generation of numerous amount of the plastic waste in our world. So, as it is a plastic concern, so as we from few decades, this plastic pollution came to our major concern. But nowadays, the a new threat that emerged, that is the microplastic pollutions. So what are the microplastics? In generally, on the depending on the size, we can differentiate different form of the plastics. Here we can see that the microplastic are those plastic particles that generally ranged between the 0.001 to 1 millimeter in their size. So now come to the types of microplastics. So what are the types of microplastics? So there are, in generally, we found there are two types of microplastics that come from the this plastic waste. One is on the basis of the production, and another one is on the basis of their thermal stability. So, on the basis of their production, the we have two types of the microplastics. One is the primary microplastics, and another one is all obviously the secondary microplastics. So, what are the primary microplastics? The primary microplastics are manufactured in a micro-sized condition and are used as industrial abrasive for sandblasting, personal care products, or electronic equipment as well as etc. For an example, the beads, the small beads that while we use scrubber or facial scrub in our skin, the small beads that we felt These are the microplastics. And these microplastics, these microforms are in generally produced in this manner, that this manner in the industry. That's why these are known as the microplastics. In a few years back, we can easily recall that some renowned toothpaste company have launched a toothpaste that contain the microbeads in it. Okay, I'm not telling that the name of that company, but just think it that nowadays that microbead containing toothpaste is now gone in from the market, because obviously some because for obviously for some regulations. So these are the microplastics, the primary microplastics that are actually produced in a microform in the industry. And another one is the secondary microplastics. These are the major source of the microplastic pollutions. The secondary microplastics are those microplastics that are generally that are generally the plastic waste that we litter here and there, the polythene bag or the PET bottles, which are generally degraded by the photochemical reactions or other corrosion or the erosions by the water or wind actions, and break down into small microforms. That means the plastics that we use in a macroform, the polythene bag or other some bags or other some plastic things that are disposed here and there or in a soil, which are generally degraded or breaks into microform by the soil, by the photo actions or by water wave actions or by air actions, and generates the small microforms of the plastics. These are considered as the secondary microplastics. Now, what are the on the basis of the thermal stability, we have two types. One is the thermosets and another one is the thermoplastics. So thermoplastic and thermosets, there are single differences that we can recall. The differences between the thermoplastic and the thermosets, that are basically thermoplastic, we can reheat, remold it. Okay, that, but thermosets cannot. That means the thermoplastics, the polythene bag or the plastic bucket that get damaged by somehow, we can reheat those plastic and remold it in a new form. Okay, but the thermosets are those types of the polymer that we cannot do this, we cannot reheat them, we cannot remold them. Okay, so here is some examples of the thermoplastics. There's the polyethylene, polypropylene, polyvinyl chloride, polyethylene terephthalate, polystyrene, etc. Whereas the thermosets are polyurethane, epoxy resins, and the melamine resin. You can recall that the melamine plant that you have, if that breaks, you cannot join them by reheating them. But a plastic bucket that breaks into two half, you can reheat them and can মোটামুটি কাজ চালানোর মতো join আমরা করতে পারি. So now come to the sources of the microplastics. As we know, the plastics are used in a several sectors, such as the packaging. Remember, the packaging sectors is the largest sectors that uses those plastics. Building and constructions, automotive, electrical and electronics, agriculture, household, leisure, sports, and other as well as. But which is directly or indirectly related to this source of the microplastic pollutions. Microplastics in generally, as our concern, as our today's concern is the plastic pollution in the aquatic environment. So in this figure, we can easily assume that the aquatic system gets their plastic product through several sources. Either it can be household sources or the personal care product, scrubber, etc., which drained by the municipal wastewater and came into the aquatic system. Plastic as well as the industrial abrasive, textiles. One of the major source of the marine plastic contamination is the textile, the shirt, the clothes you wear made up of the polystyrene or nylon or other micropolymers or other plastic polymers. Whenever we wash those clothes in a bucket or in a washing machine, the water after washing, the water contain thousands or millions of the plastic particles in them, and we just throw them, and this water through the drainage water comes into the wastewater treatment plant. And remember that in our third world, not the developing country, India is a developing country, though there is several techniques the wastewater treatment plant can have to manage this type of the plastic pollutions, but in our developing country we don't have the such type of the technology in several metro cities, that we can eradicate those plastic fibers or the plastic particles from the water, that from the water that comes from the household or the sewage. Okay, so the wastewater treatment plant, though it treats the water by removing different types of the organic or the inorganic debris, but they are unable to filter out all those microplastic particles from their treated water. So whenever these treated water are discharged in a normal aquatic bodies, so these aquatic bodies get polluted by those microplastic systems. Okay, so another one here is the vehicle tires and the microplastics in agriculture. Vehicle tires is one of the major source of the plastics, microplastic particles in the terrestrial system, and in the agriculture using of the mulch, where mulch, that is the plastic sheets. In our agricultural technology we use those sheets by minimizing the water loss from the soil. After those agricultural plastics, the disposition of those plastic sheet improper way leads to the generation of the secondary microplastic particles by the fragmentations, and somehow those fragmented plastic particles from the mulch through the runoff water came into the aquatic systems, and thus the aquatic system of our get polluted by the plastic particles, which are microplastic particles, not the macroplastic particles. The macroplastic particles also, but also the microplastic particles. In our next slide, it is projected the IUCN data, that IUCN estimated that the major source of the microplastic pollutions in our oceans comes from the synthetic textile. যে জামা কাপড়গুলি আমরা ধুই, রোজ ওয়াশ করি, সেই ওয়াশ করা থেকে যে ফাইবারস গুলি রিলিজ হয়, those are the major source of the microplastic source of the in our marine systems. Okay, so maybe after that, the car tires, city dust, road making, as well as other things are also. Now next, distribution of the microplastics in the environment. Huxley Woodward, in his paper, he assembled all those data. Those are that works on the microplastic contamination through worldwide. Um, Different water bodies, different riverine system, lake system, as well as the estuary marine systems, and his collected data shows us the microplastic contamination is everywhere. Okay, whether it is in sediment, whether or it is in surface water, in the river sediment or the lacustrine sediment, beach sediment, marine sediment in different area of the Europe and the Northern America, as well as the Asiatic countries, contain the microplastics. Not only that, the river, lakes, and the coastal waters and the marine waters of different areas, okay, of different continent contains those microplastics. He actually summarize all those data depending on the microplastic concentration that the researcher gets. Okay, and projected in this graph, you can easily visualize that the different rivers and the different sediments of different parts of the world contain how much amount of the microplastic particles per meter square area. Okay, so these are the distribution of the microplastics in the environment that projects that the microplastics is everywhere. Okay, everywhere, literally everywhere. So now concern now the research showed that the microplastic abundance and the concentration typically decreases with the soil depth. As we go deeper to the soil, the microplastic concentration in generally decreases. Okay, but the vertical transport of the microplastic have been found, which are in generally regulated by the different processes. It's named bioturbation, soil tiltage, and the water infiltration during the wet and dry cycles. These microplastics in soil may interact with different macromolecules and the microorganisms by hetero and the homo aggregation, which may be influenced by the pore water chemistry and the soil sediment uh, distributions. These microplastics, as it is a very small particles, so they have the high adsorption capability. So not only the microplastics alone are responsible for such type of the pollution, but also it call of some of their friends, such as some heavy metals, pesticides, or the organic pollutants. And these pollutants get adsorbed on the surface of the microplastics, which enhances its toxicity on soil environments. For some case study, it is shown by the Lee. He showed us that uh, there are several plants such as the wheat plant, triticum, and the lettuce plant. They are capable to uptake those microplastics by their uh, soil cracks. Okay, by their cracks of their lateral roots. Okay, not only that, Lavanga showed us that the concentration of the microplastic, if exceeds 28% of the dry weight, the earthworm shows the lethal effects on them. So the earthworm population gradually declined as the microplastic concentration increases in the soil environments. Now, Next is next is the microplastics in atmosphere. So the microplastics, the atmosphere, that means the microplastic that is present in air mainly are the microfibers. These are the small, tiny particles, lightweight. They can easily hover in the air here and distribute from one region to another region. So there are several factors of the microplastic that can distribute among the atmosphere. One of them is the urbanization, industrialization, and the human population density. Obviously, human যেখানে বেশি থাকবে সেখানে pollution বেশি হবে. Precipitation events as well as the wind action also are the responsible for the distribution of the microplastics in atmosphere. Scientists, here is the reference paper published in 14th August 2023 that they showed us that the microplastics can enter and have the capability to enter into the water cycle and can reach up to the higher atmospheric level where the cloud forms. So the cloud contains the microplastics. Remember, the rainwater is the one of the pure, and now they are contained with microplastic particles. Next is the COVID-19. Uh, COVID-19 has the important role, one of the important role of the microplastic contaminations in the different area of the world. How? Remember the mask. A short example I have taken. Remember the mask, N95 mask that we used. This N95 mask, in generally before COVID, these masks are generally these are the generally hospital waste. These were the hospital waste. Okay, but after those COVID-19, as per the requirement of our society, these masks become our household waste. Okay, so every house has this type of the mask, this type of the medical waste. So these waste product, in hospital, though they treated their waste product very carefully, but we the people, those living in society, we throw this mask after use here and there. Okay, I have already personally experienced such type of the events, and these masks contain different layers. One of the layers is made up of the polypropylene polymers. This polypropylene is a plastic polymer. Whenever we throw this mask here and there, this polypropylene generally get degraded by the photo actions or the wind actions or the wave actions. Okay, and forms and degrades and forms small microplastic particles. So these household waste, just COVID-19, a kind of a, though it prevents, we prevent the COVID-19 by this mask, but in a bad way, uh, আমরা ঠিক মতন ইউজ না করার জন্য, this becomes one of the major source of the microplastic contamination in our air. So these are the major factors. These are responsible for the microplastic contamination in the atmosphere. Now, microplastics in the hydrosphere. So, microplastic contaminations in the water and the distribution of the microplastics depends on different factors. Those are the hydrodynamic properties of the water, location, whether it is urban or the rural, natural calamities such as the tornado or the flood. A study in the showed that the 2019 flood in the Chennai are responsible for the distribution of these microplastic particles from the sea shore to the distant area of the city or the town, where in generally that much of the concentration of the microplastics was not found. So these are also the natural calamities also are responsible for the distribution. Nature of the microplastics and the deep sea transport. Remember, I have told you earlier that the microplastics are present in the sediment and the surface water. Not only surface water, but also the deep sea water. The deep sea transport of the microplastics are responsible for different factors. Number one, gravity driven transport in the sediment laden flow. Number two, biologically driven settling or the transport of surface floating or the water column suspended particles. And the number three, transport by the thermohaline currents. The microplastics that are present in maximum quantity in the water are the polyester. Polyester, we use this polymer to make up our clothes, are followed by acrylic, polypropylene, polyethylene, and the polyamide fibers. These microplastics, the small microbeads, they have the large surface area. Thus they not only absorb such different types of the other pollutant, but also they are ideal. They become the ideal place for the microbial habitat. Thus, the biofilm have been formed in the microplastic particles have been found. These biofilm contain varieties of the microorganisms, and these results the crossing between different strain of the microorganisms and generation of different antibiotic resistant microorganisms in our environment. So the antibiotic resistant microorganism that is generated on these microplastics beads. This microplastics is everywhere in the water bodies. So BESA made a study that whether is these microplastics whether it enters into the polar food web or not. So he found that by assessing the scat of the gento penguin, he found that one scat per individual 0.23 microplastic items have been present in the scat of the gento penguin. দ্যাট মিনস দ্য জেন্ডো প্যাঙ্গুইন যে খাবারটা খাচ্ছে সেই খাবারটা থেকে যে স্ক্যাটটা তৈরি করছে, সে স্ক্যাটটা অ্যানালিসিস করে সে দেখেছে সেই স্ক্যাটের মধ্যেও মাইক্রোপ্লাস্টিক কিন্তু পাওয়া যাচ্ছে। দ্যাট মিনস দ্য penguin eats those plastics somehow in the polar regions. So microplastics is everywhere in our hydrosphere also. Here is some data that distribution of the microplastics in various area, the basin of the sediment of the Thames basin, Brahmaputra river, soil aggregated in the forest buffer, polar ice of the North Pole, drinking water of the wastewater treatment plant, uh, Nandong river sanctuary, Porcupine abyssal plain, okay, one of the deepest trench of our marine world, Porcupine abyssal plain. It also the microplastics is also there. Okay, though it is a one particle per 25 square centimeter, but microplastics is there, and as well as the sea salt with the Sharkara. Okay, with the Sharkar made a study on two salt basin. One is present in Tamil Nadu, and another one is present in Gujarat. They found that the salt they produce from the seawater contain 46 to 115, or the more or less on an average 100 microplastic particles on 200 gram of salt. Okay, so if the soil refining factory haven't developed such type of the technology to get remove these plastic particle from the salt, যদি তারা ডেভেলপ না করে থাকে, আমরা স্টিল এখনো সে মাইক্রোপ্লাস্টিক খেয়ে থাকবো সল্টের মাধ্যমে। নাও নেক্সট heading is the bioaccumulation of the microplastics in fish. So bioaccumulation, as the microplastics is everywhere in soil, air, in water, so the animals living in them, okay, get accumulate those microplastics in their body. Okay, there are several factors that are responsible for this type of the accumulation. One of the is the physical properties of the microplastic: size, density, and shape. As the size is very small, so it can easily be uptaked by the different types of the phytoplankton and zooplankton and the crustaceans also. And sometimes it is found that the behavior of some aquatic organisms, such as the common goby fish, it uptakes the white microplastics because its food, brine shrimp, is pale in color. So it mistakenly uptake those microplastic particles as by assuming that these are their food. Okay, and as well as the trophic transfer is also responsible for the bioaccumulations from the lower trophic level to higher trophic level. The microplastic accumulate in the higher trophic organism's body, and the hydrodynamic properties of the water are influences the bioaccumulations. Now it is time for the short video I have prepared in this slide. Let's watch and just visualize the tiny plastic particles, how they can get accumulated in very tiniest microscopic different types of planktons, okay, which are generally the primary consumer in our marine aquatic systems. Okay, please, I request Mr. Modak or Gargi ma'am, please confirm that video has sound is or not.
No, it's blank at this moment. Picture is coming, but no sound.
Sir, your audio is mute. Hello.
It's not audible. There's no sound.
Uh, there's no sound. We didn't get the sound.
Actually, this video, it has some background music, no further.
Okay, okay.
These are the microplastic particles that get accumulated in different plankton's body. In generally the in lab, these are the fluorescence dye, Nile red. Scientists stain those microplastic particle with this dye and observe how these planktons accumulate these particles in their body. Okay, that's all. Thank you. Now come to the toxicity portions of the microplastic particles in the fish. There are different toxic effect of these microplastic particles on this in this fish. First of all is the physical damage. As it is a very hard, tiny particles, it can lead to the obstruction, diminishing the feeding behavior and the growth problems in different fishes. Not only that, the intestinal blockage, cracking of the villi, splitting of the enterocytes, and the tissue alteration have been found in different organs such as the gills, livers, and the pancreas of the fishes. This, as it is a foreign particle, so it can also stimulate the immune response of the fish. So the inflammatory response have been found, that the fish have been developed such type of the inflammatory response on an exposure of these microplastic particles. So these are the physical damages. Now, histopathological effects. So here are some data I have collected that the Danio radio, that zebrafish, upon the exposure of the polystyrene microplastics on 3 weeks, for 3 weeks, leads to the inflammation and the lipid accumulation in the liver. The juvenile Oncorhynchus mycis on the exposure of the polystyrene microplastics for the 96 hours leads to the damaging of different organs such as the gills, gut, and the skins. In the gill, the height of the primary and the secondary lamellae have been decreased. In the gut, the villi diameter and the height also decreased. And in skin, it has been found that the hyperplasia of the epidermis occurs. The juvenile Clarius gariepinus on the exposure of the polyvinyl chloride or the PVC for the 45 days, it is a chronic exposure. The glycogen depletion, the fatty vacuolation, and the degeneration of the hepatocellular necrosis in the liver have been found. In the European sea bass, same exposure of the PVC for 30 days, widening of the lamina propria, that is the gut cavity, shortening of the swelling of the villi, and the vacuolation of the enterocytes have been found. And also the goblet cells that is present in the liver also increases in different folds. Here is some slide picture of the histopathological damage in fishes. In this first picture, we can easily visualize. Cursor is not visible. Okay, the C marked picture in this slide. The C marked picture is the dissected fish gut. The green color is the microplastic particles that is found in the fish gut, and D marked picture DEF is the stained slide of epithelial tissue of fishes, sunbeam, git-headed sunbeam, this fish, and it is clearly shown that the increasing toxicity of the microplastics as the time goes, the degeneration of the tissue of their epithelial layer and the enterocytes have been found in here. So in the D picture, the tissue were well constructed, but in the F picture, vacuolization and the epithelial tissue damage have been found. And so these are the some pictures of the histopathological damages. Now, the hematological and the hematobiochemical changes. Due to the exposure of the polyvinyl chloride on the juvenile Clarius gariepinus for the 45 days leads to the decrease in their blood glucose and the decrease in the serum protein level. And as well as their blood glucose and triglyceride level have been increased in here. Whereas the Nile tilapia, on the exposure of the raw microplastic powder for 15 days, the blood creatinine, uric acid, ASTLP, glucose level, or other blood parameter have been found in a decreasing way. On in African catfish, the polyethylene exposure for the 96 hours, the blood high density lipoprotein were significantly decreases, and the plasma albumin to globulin ratio was significantly increases. Whereas in the Jacob-Ever, on the polystyrene exposure for the 21 days, the aspartate aminotransferase, one of the major transforming enzyme in our liver, creatine kinase, also important enzyme in our liver, albumin, globulin in the serum of the fish were increased by different folds. So these are the hematological changes that shows that upon the exposure of the microplastics on different conditions, the hematological stress have been found in this fish model. Now, the biochemical alteration. The Gitt-Hayden sunbeam on the exposure of the low density polyethylene for the 90 days period, the GST and the reduced glutathione and the MDA was increases. GST and the reduced glutathione is the one of the major important enzyme for one of the major biotransformation enzyme that actually protect us from different types of the oxidative stress that leads to the DNA damage of us. And MDA generally signifies the lipid peroxidation. That means the degeneration of our plasma membrane. That means the cell of our body get degenerated. The plasma membrane, which is made up of the majorly lipid, get degenerated. If the MDA level increases, it signifies that. Whereas in the silver bar, on the exposure of the PVC for the 96 hours, the activity of the trypsin and the chymotrypsin, one of the two major key enzyme to for the digestion of protein in our stomach, in our intestine, were significantly increases. Whereas in the Juvius clarius gariepinus on the PVC exposure for the 45 days, SOD, glutathione peroxidase, CAT, these all are the biotransformation enzyme present in our liver that actually helps us to transform the xenobiotic particles or into different way, or these enzymes actually helps to reduce the oxidative stress by converting the superoxide anion into the water and the oxygen molecule um, uh, significantly decreases. That means the as the SOD decreases and the glutathione peroxidase or the CAT decreases, that means the superoxide anion that actually generated through stress, আমরা মানে নিত্য নৈমিত্তিক জীবনে যে স্ট্রেসের মধ্যে দিয়ে যাই সেই স্ট্রেসের মধ্যেও আমাদের সুপার অক্সাইড অ্যানায়ন এবং হাইড্রক্সিল আয়ন ডেভেলপ হয় এবং these ions are very active reactive in nature, and these ions actually damages our DNA. These interfere different proteins architecture and inhibit their properties. Okay, and in a short form it actually আমাদের মানে বুড়িয়ে দেয়, আমাদের সিস্টেমটাকে বসিয়ে দেয়। Okay, so SOD, CAT, these are those enzymes that actually protects us for this type of the oxidative stress. Okay, so as this SOD and CAT decreases in fish body, that means the fish life expectancy gets shortened. And next is the adult zebrafish on the exposure of the polystyrene microplastic for the 21 days, glutamine, pyruvic acid, and LDH. These are the important biochemical marker of our body. These also decreases in liver. Aureochromic niloticus on the polystyrene microplastics for 14 days exposure, the activities of the cytochrome P450, it is the phase 1 biotransformation enzyme that actually oxidize the xenobiotic particle molecules into different substrate, and that are easily be able to conjugate by the phase 2 enzymes. And phase 2 enzyme, after the conjugation, it becomes the water soluble and get uh, released from our body. This activity of the cytochrome P450 significantly increases. That means it denotes upon the exposure of the polystyrene microplastics, the Oreochromis niloticus, tilapia মাছ, তো এটা আমাদের স্ট্রেসের মধ্যে, it comes under the stress. Now the neurological and the behavioral defects. On the exposure of the polystyrene microplastics for the 14 days, the acetylcholine esterase activity is inhibited by 37.7%. Acetylcholine esterase, these are those enzymes that actually um, degrade the acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter, after one signal transmission. If acetylcholine esterase activity got inhibited, several types of the neurological disorder will appear. Crucian curve on the exposure of the polystyrene microplastics, changes in their brain appearance and the weight have been found. On the exposure of the 4-month-old male zebrafish of polyethylene microplastic for 96 hours, seizure, tail bending, labor breathing, erratic movement, these type of behavioral abnormality have been found. Then remember, this type of the behavioral activity in the natural water cause them to act differently, that will alter their normal behavioral pattern, and that will affect their population and affect their reproduction as well as, and thus the fish population will be declined. Ammon dam fish on the exposure of the polystyrene microplastics increases behavioral index such as the bite rate, total distance moved in 3 minutes, etc. have been found. In the common goby, on the exposure of the polystyrene and the polyethylene microplastic for the 96 hours, predatory performance and the efficiency were free of the fish were significantly reduced. That means common goby যেটা ব্রাইন শিমকে নিজের ফুড হিসেবে মনে করে মাইক্রোপ্লাস্টিক খেয়ে ফেলছিল, তার প্রিডেটরি নেচারটাই ডিমিনিশড হয়ে যাচ্ছে. দিস বিহেভিয়ারাল অল্টারেশন causes several major threats for the declining of their population. Now, the effect on the reproduction and the development and the gene expression of the gut microbiota. The male zebrafish on the exposure of the polyethylene microplastics for 96 hours, disruption of the oogenesis process have been found. In Daddio radio, on the exposure of the polyethylene and polystyrene microplastics, as well as the it is found that the exposure of the microbiota, gut microbiota, proteobacteria significantly increases. Remember, the gut microbiota is very much important role in the animals nutritional purposes. আমরা যে খাবারটা খাই সেই খাবারের একটা পার্ট ডাইজেস্ট করে আমাদের গাট মাইক্রোবায়োটা গুলো, তেমনি ফিশেদেরও গাট মাইক্রোবায়োটা plays such type of the significant role. Whenever the shifting of the population from such composition to different composition in their gut microbiota level occurs, so it affects all over the fish health and the fish nutritional values. And as well as the gene expression of the glycolipid metabolism have been decreased. Significantly increases of mRNA and the protein level, interleukin 1 alpha, 1 beta, and IFN. These are some important serum protein that are responsible for immunological or the defensive purpose, that have been increases upon exposure of the polystyrene microplastics in Danio radio or the zebrafish. So these are some toxic effect of the microplastics in different fishes that are. Now, ecotoxical, as in our nature, not only microplastics is there are several types of other pollutants also there. In our earlier slide, I have already told you that microplastics not only alone cause the toxicity, but it has the potential to absorb other pollutant on their surfaces. So in our nature, the microplastic, when one fish engulf or uptake one microplastic particle, remember it not only uptake one microplastic particle but also uptake some metals, some polyaromatic hydrocarbons, some organic pollutant also, or some pesticides also. Okay, so as the toxic effect on the organism come in a combined manner. So on a point of ecotoxicological view, we got in generally three types of effect. We have several types of effect. Here I only present three type of effect. One is the synergistic effect. That means when one pollutant alone cause a toxicity, another pollutant alone cause a certain degree of toxicity, but when they both combine, their toxicity rapidly increases manyfold. That means 2 plus 2 equals 20. In a short form, এটাই বোঝানো যায় 2 plus 2 4 হওয়ার জায়গায় 20 হয়ে গেছে, মানে তাদের toxicity rapidly increase করে গেছে। যেমন when 2018 showed that the co-exposure of the polystyrene and the cadmium led to the increased activity of the catalase, lysozyme, acid phosphatase, alkaline phosphatase, and protein carboxyl contained in discus fish. মানে একা পলিস্টাইরিন ক্যাডমিয়াম যতটা না তাদের এদের লেভেলটা হাই করতে পারতো, এরা দুজন যখন একসাথে কম্বাইন হয়ে যায় এদের টক্সিসিটি আরো মানে 10 টাইমস বেড়ে গেল। অ্যান্টাগনিস্টিক এফেক্ট sometimes sometimes microplastic while combined with other particles, their both toxic effect get diminished, get reduced. That means 2 plus t is not equals to 4, it is equals to 3. Slay in the year 2007 found that the presence of the PVC decreases the bioavailability of the phenanthrene. It is one of the important plasticizer. Remember, plasticizer are not plastics, but it also has such type of the toxicity. Plasticizer are those chemicals that help plastics makes more durable. Okay, so a small example I am going to share you. BPA, বাচ্চাদের দুধের বোতলে লেখা থাকে BPA free. What is BPA? Bisphenol A. It is one of a plasticizer that makes the plastic polymer more durable. Remember, this BPA is also toxic. It has also some kind of the neurological effects. ওকে, সো যদি বাচ্চারা সেই বিপিএ খায়, বাচ্চাদের ক্ষেত্রে অবভিয়াসলি টক্সিক এফেক্টটা অনেকটা বেশি ভাবে দেখাবে, কিন্তু যদি বড়দের খেলে, বড়দের ক্ষেত্রে যেহেতু ডোজটা কম থাকে, দে উইল শো মিনিমাল অ্যামাউন্ট অফ দ্য টক্সিক এফেক্ট, দ্যাট ইজ দ্য নেগলিজিবল অ্যামাউন্ট, ইট ইজ নট generally visualized. So these are the plasticizer. The PVC decreases the bioavailability of this plasticizer on zebrafish, and also the 17 alpha ethinyl estradiol. It is the one of the precursor of the estradiol by maximum 38 to 48% as well as. Last one is the potentiating effect. The plastic, one chemical alone, either it cannot cause any kind of the toxicity, but whenever it combines with other plastic, other component, its toxicity get enhanced. একাই কিছু করতে পারতো না, কিন্তু যখনই ও প্লাস্টিক পার্টিকেলের সাথে কম্বাইন করে গেল, তার টক্সিসিটি প্রায় 10 গুণ 30 গুণ বেড়ে গেল। such as Pomatoscistus microbes, a co-exposure of the polyethylene and the chromium leads to the decrease of the acetylcholine and the increase of the lipid peroxidation. This is the example of the potentiating effect. So not only microplastics is there, not only in our environment, I already told about the microplastic cause such type of the toxicity, but in the real environment, not only the microplastics were there, there are other several pollutants, and microplastics combining joins with them by creating such degree of the toxic effect. It can be enhanced manifold, it can be decreased, or it can be remain same. Remain same in generally হয় না, but such type of effect have been found in nature. Now another video I have already prepared, but as you told that sound is not audible of the, so I'll skip this. Okay, okay, now as I told you that the microplastics creates how much damage in aquatic environment, in how much create how much amount of damage in fish, okay, fish health. But it also somehow creates a major toxic effect to us. A study showed that people swallow 2 polyethylene bag a year through microplastics. Remember, in the fine morning in this winter, whenever we are having a cup of tea and deep those tea bag, such Taj Mahal company tea bag, deep kochi, this tea bag made up of plastic polymers. Whenever the IIT Kharagpur published a paper on this type of study, whenever this tea bag have been have was dipped in a hot water, thousands of microplastics, more than 50,000 amount of microplastic have been released in your tea. Okay, চায়ের মধ্যে এত মাইক্রোপ্লাস্টিক ছেড়ে দেওয়া হয় জাস্ট একটা ডিপের পেছনে. So we eat microplastics, we eat plastics in a several manner. We don't know how we eat microplastics or how we eat plastics. Um Remember the plastic box, whenever we order something from Swiggy or Zomato, they supply food to us in a plastic box, and sometimes it is a kind of a malpractice. Sometimes we just use those plastic box to reheat in a micro oven. If the biryani get cold, so we just put the plastic box in microwave and turn on the microwave. And these, remember, this leads to the release of the different types of the plasticizer from that boxes. Okay, these compel and your biryani that get contaminated with different type of plasticizer. Not only that, the drinking water, you have Bisleri, you have Aquafina, this type of the drinking water bottle that you purchased from the shop. This drinking water bottle is a single use bottle. Different plastic bottles have different marker in a triangular form. যদি আপনারা প্লাস্টিক বটলের তলায় দেখেন একটা ট্রায়াঙ্গেলের মধ্যে 1 2 3 4 করে বিভিন্ন মার্ক নাম্বারিং করা থাকে. This number has a significance that how many what type of plastic is this. That drinking water bottle, Bisleri or such paid bottle, such bottle, mineral water bottle, is a single use bottle. But we several of us have a kind of a malpractice to use them regularly. Okay, if the bottle empty, we fill it up and use them regularly. And this, remember, this practice releases those microplastics in the water. Not only microplastics, and the plasticizer also release in the water. So whenever we drink that water, we get affected by the microplastic pollutions. And here is some evidences. And these microplastics, this picture, microplastics come from the clothes, medicine, dust, cosmetics, foods, and this leads to the different types of toxicity in us, such as the particle toxicity, oxidative stress toxicity. I already told you the generation of the superoxide anion, inflammation, translocation, and last is the cancer. It is also responsible for the causing cancer. Three important fact that came to notice, that three important fact I have shared in here, that we have three kind of barriers. One is the blood-brain barrier, second is the placenta. Blood-brain barrier is the kind of a barrier where, hello, is it where our brain neuron is protected by different neuroglial cell from the blood, as the blood contain different types of biomolecules, but neuron, remember, neuron is that type of the cell or that type of the tissues that cannot be that are unable to divide, though after certain age, that are unable to divide. So if one neuron get damaged, the damage is permanent. So to protect those neurons, some neuroglial cells such as the oligodendroglia, astrocytes, they create a bridge. They hold neuron in one hand and hold blood vessels in another hand and filter the necessary nutrient element from blood and transfer them to neuron. So they act as a filter. But the study reveals that the micro and the nanoplastic particles are able to breach that blood-brain barrier. That means the microplastic particles can enters into a neuron, and somehow it will damage our neuron. And and remember, this damage is permanent and can cause different types of neurological disorder. Next is the microplastics found in the human heart for the first time. Okay, so human heart, our cardiac, so it also are responsible some days. It becomes responsible for the cardiac arrest also. And last of all, the it is detection of the microplastics in the human placenta. The placenta is the one of the sieve that separates mother from their baby. Okay, so baby, as its genetic composition is different from their mother, so if the baby's blood get mixed with the mother's blood, okay, mother will treated baby's blood or baby's protein as a different and protein, different foreign particles, and develop antibody against them. Okay, so placenta prevent this event by sieving the important materials from mother's body to baby's body. And here the study shows the detection of the microplastics in the human placenta. So human placenta contain the microplastics. So as the microplastics damages different types of the tissue in fish, so it can damages the placenta. It can in future, if the microplastic pollutions get boomed up in a several folds in uh, we might get different result for different types of the birth defects. So it is the alarming situation today's now. So now I already told you different types of the threatening activity, okay, threatening events. So now this slide focuses on the remediation, on the amelioration. That means the how can we remediate this type of the events. So first figure, um, the first table showed us that the wastewater treatment plant, one of the major source of the microplastic pollution in the aquatic environment. I already told you earlier. So the wastewater treatment plant, we can have this type of the technology, that is the oxidation ditch, ozone ditch, rapid filtration, anaerobic and aerobic sequencing batch reactors, this type of the technology to minimize the microplastic emission or the microplastic discharge in a treated water. Okay, not only that, we can use different types of the microorganisms such as the enterobacteria, Ideonella sacchaensis. This Ideonella sacchaensis, this bacteria have been found in a wax moth worm. Okay, and they are the plastic eating worm. They can eat polyethylene plastic, and these bacteria present in their gut are able to degrade those plastic polymers. Okay, so we can use these bacteria. And here are some other fungi examples: cladosporium, cladosporides. These all these microbes are responsible for the plastic degradation or microplastic degradation. Or we can use different plants such as the water hyacinth, water lettuce, or the dicoids that can absorb the plastic particles from the aquatic environment. Okay, so we can use this type of the practice, or we can reduce, reuse, and recycle. That is the main major practice of us. We should follow it. Though the Indian government um, uh, published a law that in the year 2022 December, that the use of that 120 micron less micron plastic is banned. মানে 120 মাইক্রনের তলায় প্লাস্টিক আমরা ইউজ করা যাবে না, এটা 2022-এর অ্যামেন্ডমেন্টের মধ্যে হয়েছে। কিন্তু আমরা বাজারে গেলে সবাই দেখি সেই 40 মাইক্রনের তলার প্লাস্টিকই আমরা ব্যবহার করি। সো লেটেস্ট অ্যামেন্ডমেন্টে 120 মাইক্রনের তলার প্লাস্টিক কিন্তু আমরা ইউজ করতে পারবো না। Orissa government have established a Bartan bank to reduce plastic waste. Okay, they can. Hello.
Hello, I'm listening. Huh? Okay,
Hello.
Continue, sir.
Okay. Or we can use the biodegradable plastic. These are some information regarding biodegradable plastics. And also the scientists have created synthetic sponges that soak up the microplastics as the science technology develops. So we can have different types of the solutions. So at last, though this study our microplastic research is a promising research field for nowadays, but uh, there are several future perspectives regarding these studies. That is the lack of sufficient data regarding freshwater species. We don't have that much of amount of the data of microplastic toxicity of freshwater species. Need to increase the research effort and investigate the occurrence of the ecological impact of the microplastic on the freshwater fish species in the future. And also we have to study the correlation of the microplastic morphology and the chemistry with the microplastic toxicity, and need more understanding, more data in the lab simulation and environmental concentration as well as. So this is a emerging field, emerging topic in nowadays. So different type of the research approach uh, is in demand. So this is the